Hello fellow scrubs, I'm Dana Lennox, and today I'm walking you through Overwatch. Specifically, Ana today. Now Ana, for those of you who don't know, is an old gal with a snarky attitude and a no-nonsense demeanor. Like most Overwatch characters, her story is kind of shrouded in mystery. From what we do know from her short film and comic books, she is a founding member of the Overwatch team and also the mother of another big Overwatch character, Pharah. During a covert mission, Ana was surprised to find Emily Lacroix, aka Widowmaker. I can't actually say her name, I don't speak French, sorry. And was so surprised to see her because she was a fellow comrade's wife, and he died. So they thought she was missing too. Ana hesitated, and in that time, Widowmaker shot her in the eye. So she was long thought dead by the rest of her comrades, leaving her teammates behind and her daughter. In-game, she is a powerful healer and can completely control the situation if played correctly. Problem is, you're going to always have to hit your target. Ana is not noob friendly. I repeat, not noob friendly. Don't let that deter you. You can practice in the practice room or, annoy pugs in quick play. Sorry. However, please be courteous and do not use her in competitive mode until you feel comfortable. So Ana has 4 main components. She can sleep, she can heal, she can stop healing, and she can boost the healing. Her ultimate is super useful because it can lessen damage on a player and also increase the damage they give. So it must be used wisely. Certain situations might call for different tactics when playing Ana, but here are some key elements you should remember. Number 1, always heal first. Your main job is to keep your teammates alive, not get kills. This is especially true when you're the only healer on your team. And your rifle, it doesn't do a lot of damage, so always heal first. That is your main objective. There are many ways to go about healing. First, you can shoot your teammates. Second, you can throw your bionic grenade, which does healing at first, but also boosts the healing that you do. So, pro tip, throw the grenade first, then start shooting. So first tip, shoot your teammates. You'll hear Ana say, "Take your medicine," and not in a British accent. That was kind of funny. And the second thing to do is to throw that bionic grenade. It not only heals, but it also boosts the healing. So this is especially useful on tanks when they're really low, and it also can save a squishy's life. Throw and throw and throw, but also remember, you can shoot them afterwards and it'll do a lot more healing. You also need to remember though to be a little stingy with that grenade because Ana does not self-heal. So you have to sometimes throw it on yourself. So the best way to go about this is to run up to somebody who also needs healing and then look down and throw it. And that way you get the heals that you need and also you're not wasting it on just yourself. 2, play the field. You should always be out of the line of fire behind your friends. So you should be able to see everything going on, not only with your team, but the team coming at you. So how do you play the field? Well, something to remember is Ana is not very mobile. So you have to use that sleep dart a lot, but there are many sticky situations that you can get into if you do or do not have that sleep dart. So one pro tip, always have your headphones on. Something that's really important as Ana is being able to hear footsteps. Why is this? Because there are flankers. There's Tracer, Genji, and Reaper, and those are your biggest problems that you'll face. You're going to need that sleep dart to get rid of them because they will kill you. So what do you do when you have one of those 3 flankers? You either need to stay out of sight and kind of snipe from an angle or snipe from an area where they don't necessarily know where you are yet, and you need to be able to move around behind your team. However, sometimes they're gonna find you. So you have to be really stingy with your sleep dart sometimes and you're gonna have to use it. Remember, it has a very, very slow animation, so you're most likely gonna miss, so make it count. In the worst case scenario, if you miss, throw your bionic grenade at them. Sometimes a little bit of damage at a flanker is enough to scare them away for you to then run away. And I mean run. Get to a tank, get to a DPS, get to someone who can help you. And make sure they can see you and help you. And if you're on the mic, Even better, call it out. Of course, there are other reasons to use your sleep dart other than saving your ass. It is a fantastic way to shut down enemy ultimates. What kind of ultimates am I talking about? Soldier 76, there's Roadhog, there's Reaper, really good against Reaper. Genji, which is hilarious if you can land it, that is. You're going to save your team's ass, and they're gonna thank you for it. And there are also more reasons to use your sleep dart. Sometimes there is a certain player on the other team shutting down your entire team. There could be a Widowmaker, a Bastion who's parked in a really nice spot, or an aggro bro Reinhardt who's just hammering it out on your team. Use your sleep dart, your team will thank you for that too. Number 3. Throwing your bionic grenade at healers is great because you want the healers to go down first. The less healing they do to their team, the more your team can then go in and completely wipe them. But if you can't get a healer, it's still good to throw that bionic grenade at the group or at especially squishies, because the faster you get them down, the less damage that goes onto your team. Number 4, your ultimate, the Nano Boost. Now, you need to remember when you get your ultimate, make sure you spam and tell your team that your ultimate is ready.
All soldiers are hot. Nano Boost is ready to deploy.
The last thing you want is to give someone your ultimate and they just stand there because they don't know what to do anymore. It's like a deer in the headlights. They just stop and are like, oh no, I have the ultimate. I have ultimate power. And then it's gone. And they did nothing and you wasted it. Also, when you spam your ult, it lets other people know to tell you that their ult is ready. This is really good for you because you want to pair those together. So who should you nano boost? Well, first you need to think about who can do a lot of damage, who is going to need your ult to not be damaged while doing it, and will your nano boost increase their ult as well? That means someone like Genji, who we've all seen it, it's super sad, but he'll start his little ult and then he'll die. And nothing is sadder than seeing a Genji who doesn't get to use his Dragon Blade and cut someone's face off. So who are the other people that you should give the ult to other than just Genji? There's Reaper, McCree, a charged up Zarya, Reinhardt, Pharah, Bastion, Torbjorn, and Tracer. Those are the people that are high priority in giving the ult to. Lesser priority are people who, yes, they would benefit from getting your nano boost, like from less damage or just getting a little more damage with their regular stuff, but it doesn't help their ult at all. So they literally don't matter during an ult phase. You can just give it to them to keep them alive or to help them boost the damage. However, I still would suggest giving it to the higher priorities I just mentioned. However, these people you can give it to as well if it's a little more dire. And they're as follows. D.Va. Now, D.Va, you can keep her in the front lines longer, and you can also make it so that her little pellets do more damage. But again, this does not help her ult at all. Once she hits her ult, your nano boost is gone. So I've actually watched somebody use my nano boost and then immediately ult, so it was wasted completely. So only give it to D.Va if she doesn't have her ult ready and she's the only one near a payload or a checkpoint. Another sort of waste, but okay to give to if you need to, is Widowmaker. I highly shun it just because she doesn't really need it. She already does a lot of damage and she shouldn't be taking on a lot of damage. There's not a huge point to giving it to her unless she's on the point or on a payload and is helping the team out other than sniping. And lastly, there's Symmetra. It does kind of help her get closer to the enemy and then use her little beam to kill people, but it doesn't help any of her ults and it just really doesn't do much for the team. So again, always think about high priority people first, them second if you have to. And the last thing, the lowest priority, is any supports like Mercy, Lucio, or Zenyatta. It doesn't help their ult at all. Mercy doesn't do any damage, or at least shouldn't be unless she's being attacked for some reason. And then Lucio and Zenyatta, yeah, it might help them do their little thing, but they do such little damage that it's not that helpful. The only time you give it to any of those three is to keep them alive long enough to use one of their ults, and that's in dire situations. And most of the time, you can just throw your Bionic Grenade at one of them, shoot them a little bit, and then maybe sleep dart the person trying to kill them. Otherwise, okay, use it, but very, very situational. Satya Vaswani, pretty sure that's how you say her name, is a 28-year-old Indian architect. Seriously, like, Overwatch is full of awesome diversity. She actually was confirmed to be autistic through her comic books. Symmetra is considered highly intelligent, and she truly wants to make the world a better place. However, because of the place she works at and also her own weird morals, she doesn't always go about it the right way. Funny enough, this company that she's worked for, she's even questioned, and yet somehow she still ends up working for them. The fun part about this is that same company, another character from Overwatch has been constantly fighting with, and that is Lucio. So, to do right by Symmetra, there are 5 main abilities you should know about. Her Photon Projector, her Photon Orb, her Photon Barrier, Sentry Turrets, and her dual ultimate. It is a barrier or a teleporter. Please note that Symmetra is mostly a defense character. In fact, no, she is the defense character other than maybe Torbjorn. We can go through how to use her in attack, but until I would say you were comfortable or pro status with her, I would stick to just defense. First, her Sentry Turrets. This is probably the hardest thing to learn, and it just comes with the territory of learning how to play Overwatch in general. You need to know the maps. I highly suggest going through either quick play or I would go and play against bots. You need to know where to put your turrets. It's not just about sneaking and hiding them in right where the enemy is going to come out. You want to be able to control the map. So ask yourself these few questions. Is there a choke point on the map? If so, is there a good place to put those turrets where the enemy won't immediately see them when running through the choke point? However, not all maps have a clear choke point. The best thing you can do in that instance is to set up either a kill room or be aware of where your enemy is constantly going through. You'll notice people kind of run into habit. They usually go through the same hall quite a few times. So if you pay attention to where your enemy is constantly coming from, you can put your turrets in that sneaky little areas up there and zap them and maybe deter them from wanting to go there so that it gives your team time to regroup. Worst case scenario, if you don't know the maps well enough, you do want to play quick play because you're more of a hands-on learner and the bot system is a little weird, I will be honest. They always run in a line together. It's not the best practice. So, if you need to, you can always just put your turrets on the point in little sneaky snake areas and hope to zap a Tracer or a Reinhardt as they try to charge in or something. That is the easiest way to help your team. However, those turrets are going to constantly be going down, so you're going to have to continually refresh them and put them in new sneaky snake spots. So just be aware of that. One thing to note is you only get 6 sentry turrets, so be very stingy of where you put them, and usually you want to put them somewhat close proximity because the more there are, they start to slow the enemy and drain them of health faster. When you only have one, that's just like kind of like a little bee sting. You don't want just to bee sting them, you want to swarm them. So just be wary of where you're putting them. The best way to manipulate the enemy's flow, let's think of a map. Let's look at Numbani, for instance. Lots of players like to come from the right of the point up above. So what do? If I were you, I would go and put some turrets up there immediately, and maybe some at the bottom because there's 2 points over there that they can sneak around. I'd put them there just to deter them from constantly going that way. You want them to come through a choke point. And so if you manipulate the other areas that they can go to force them into that choke point instead for the rest of your team to swarm up on them, you're going to be helping your team immensely. Second and third is her Photon Projector and the Orbs. I'm putting these 2 together because they do a similar function. They're just slightly different, and here's why. So the difference between the Photon Projector and the Photon Orbs is pretty simple. The projector is a short distance So you have to be close to the enemy to kill someone. The photon orb, you either have to charge up a little bit and you send it out, and it's more of a long-ranged weapon. You can also send small little spurts of orbs everywhere. So what do you do with the photon projector? First of all, you have to be close, but the thing that's tricky about her projector is that you have to continually follow the enemy. So it's not very good on enemies like Tracer, who's super fast and can blink away. It's not good on Genji because he can just zoop away and be gone. And you also don't really want to be close to someone like Reaper because he does a lot of damage really close. And since Symmetra doesn't have a whole lot of health, it might be best to kind of stay away from him and go for others if you can. The photon projector is a damage over time weapon, meaning it has to stay locked on the entire time. So basically what this means is the longer it's on the enemy, the more damage it's going to do. So it's always best to put it on a slow enemy that you know, like, you can get rid of. And pro tip, your photon projector can actually go through Reinhardt's shield and kill him slowly. And there's not a lot he can do about it other than swing at you. So as long as you're like wary of that, you can take him down. But your number one priority always is take down the healers first if you can. The one really nice thing about the photon projector is if you're really bad at aiming, and I know some of you are, and that's okay, but the nice thing about her photon projector is you don't have to aim a whole lot. You just gotta make sure you stay on them. But there's no like real aiming situation you gotta worry about. Now the orb. The orb, as I said, is a long range version for you. It's not going to do the most damage. It's not going to necessarily kill an enemy unless they're already a little bit low as it is. But it is something nice to help also manipulate the field a little bit. For instance, if you know your turrets are on the right and they're kind of coming from the middle, but they can also come from the side a little bit, you can send a few, you can just do this and just send a few orbs that way and annoy the enemy enough because they're slow, so they're going to be able to dodge them, but you might be able to make them move over closer to where your turrets are. It's just about being mindful of where you can manipulate the enemy. They're going to dodge your orbs. Some might take it if they're like a Reinhardt or something, but Other than using the orb to bait towards the turrets of yours, you can also bait people towards, let's say, the Reaper on your team. He needs to be up close too, so think about your teammates, who they are, what their strengths are, and try and see if you can leverage the map that way as well. And one really fun thing that I like to do, even though it really doesn't have much effect at all, but it brings me personal satisfaction, is sending a bunch of orbs up at Pharah. Just because she has to sit there and continually dodge while also trying to make hits because her blaster is also really slow, so she's got to really be like, ah. We'll get into more of her in another episode. But it's just fun to sometimes send those up at her. She might start shooting at you after that because she'll get annoyed, but everyone is annoyed by Pharah. So it's fun to also annoy a Pharah. As perfect as Symmetra might be, she is weak to a few characters, and I mentioned a few as Tracer, Genji, and Reaper, but she's also weak to Soldier, McCree, and Pharah, which is why it's funny to annoy Pharah. And since Symmetra has to get close to do any real damage to her enemies, that brings us to our fourth point, her photon barrier. If you find yourself running in or taking on a lot of damage, just pop that baby and then run with it. Just have it right in front of you as like nice sunshades. And number 5, her dual ultimate. So, should you do the teleporter or the shield generator? That is the question. There's a few things you should ask yourself in the situation where you have your ultimate. Is your team dying a lot? And if so, do they have to run back from very far? If so, it might be best to use the teleporter. However, if they're dying a lot, but they only have to run back a little bit, it might be better to use the shield generator to give everyone more health, including your healers, who need to stay alive. The best way to play Symmetra is to just kind of use your head a little bit. What do you think makes sense for your team? But on the other hand, maybe the shield barrier isn't going to do the job. It only gives them so much health. If you're taking on a lot of damage and you don't have a lot of tanks or anyone to like mitigate that damage a little bit, it might be better to just put the teleporter in because you're going to want those healers to get back as fast as possible to continue healing. Especially if it's a Mercy who can come in with a clutch ult and then bring back your entire team, including you. So with the shield generator, I guess like the best way to look at it is Is your team full of squishies and do they need more health? Probably. But is your team full of squishies and also tanks to help with damage? Well, in that case, you maybe just want the teleporter so that way your tanks and your healers can get back. Look at both situations and you have to kind of use your judgment because it changes every game depending on who your teammates pick and how well they play. It may not always be up to you. The best thing I can say, regardless of whichever one you use, make sure that you're hiding your teleporter in a good spot that's also close, but also if you're doing your shield generator, you also want that pretty damn close to where you're fighting. It has a pretty large radius, but it's still good to have it close by. But here's the thing. Your teleporter and your shield generator, if the enemy finds it, they can damage it and get rid of it, and then you have to recharge your ult all over again. Granted, it charges pretty quick, but you might want to leave a turret or two next to your teleporter or your shield generator just to make sure it has that extra added bonus of being protected. Alright, my clever little sneaky scrubs, that is the end of the Symmetra walkthrough. Lena Oxton is a 26-year-old adventurer from London and the youngest recruit for the Overwatch experimental flight program. Lena Oxton, or aka Tracer, is kind of like our modern-day Amelia Earhart. She was a very headstrong girl who wanted to be in part of the pilot program in Overwatch. However, there was a malfunction during this experimental flight program that made her desynchronized, I think that's how you say it, and it messed up the flow of her time. She would go in and out of time, blinking, if you will, but never able to stay in the present. So, with the help of Winston, our very scientific gorilla, he made her chronal accelerator device, which kept her in the present but also able to blink a couple times, making her the perfect candidate for Overwatch's fight program. This effect also made her be able to go back in time, which goes into the abilities that she has. So, the four main abilities is obviously her pulse pistols, which are quick rapid fire shots. She has 2 of them. Her blink, which transfers you to another point faster, meaning you can go backwards, forwards, or sideways, or strafe out of enemy fire or to a point faster. Her blinks recharge for every like 3 seconds or so. Recall is her ability to go back in time, usually giving you more health if back in time you had more health. So for instance, if you're running forward and you had a bunch of health way back here at this point, but then a couple seconds you were down half health, you could recall and you would have all your health back and you would also be put back to that starting point. So recall is good for getting your health back, but also just taking you back to a spot you may want to be in. We'll get back to that more in our strategy. And finally, her ultimate, Pulse Bomb, which is basically a sticky grenade that does a big area of effect damage, so you can stick that on someone or stick it in the group of somebody and it'll blow up, but be careful because it will also hurt you, so you need to blink away. So Tracer is easier to explain than she is to play, so I'm going to go into some strategies in which we should talk about in order to play Tracer a little bit better. Because of her small amount of ability, she seems like she would be an easy one to get into as a starter, but I wouldn't say she's quite beginner friendly, but she's not exactly a pro either. Like, she's somewhere in the middle. You're going to have a harder time with her if you're a beginner, but she should get pretty easy as you learn the maps, as you learn how the game runs, what abilities and who to look out for. So as to Tracer's strategy, because of her pistols and her blink and her high mobility, she is a hit and run playstyle. She's also extremely squishy, and I want to make this point clear, she is not a head-on killer. You want to flank around and you want to break groups of people up. That is your main job as Tracer, is being a flanker, quote unquote. Tracer is highly mobile using her blink and recall. This makes her a great flanker, but also really good at baiting people's abilities. For example, if you blink into an enemy, let them see you, and quickly blink away, usually they'll try to use something like, for instance, McCree.
Whoa there!
He will use his flashbang on you, but if you've already blinked away, then he just used his ability and completely wasted it. Another example would be Roadhog.
Say bacon one more time.
If he sees you, quickly tries to grappling hook you, but you already blinked away. Those are 2 abilities that are now off the table for a few seconds that not only helps your team, but helps you now take down those enemies because they no longer have anything against you. The reason she is a flanker is because of that mobility, she can get behind the enemy, she can stop static teams. So whether or not it's a choke point or they just have a really good defense system in place, like let's say like a Reinhardt, a Bastion, and a Mercy are all like piled up in one spot, she is the perfect person to go in and start blasting and putting pressure on them to move so that the rest of your team can get in there while their defenses are scattered. It's also useful because her ultimate, like I previously stated, is kind of like a sticky bomb, and the best way to use her ultimate is to throw it on a tank like Reinhardt or Winston, because people are usually grouped up around them trying to be protected by their shield. So if you throw it on him, not only could you possibly, like if he has low health obviously, you're not going to kill him at full health, but you'll take him down quite a bit, but you will kill the people around him if they don't move in time. So basically the three things you really need to know for strategy: flank, harass, and if you can, break up any groups. Make them come after you, and if you are low health and can't use your recall, you can go ahead and blink towards your healers real quick, get healed, and then go back to harassing. Some of the characters that Tracer is very strong against is Bastion, Mercy, Widowmaker, Hanzo, anyone who's really slow and squishy. You always want to go for healers if you can. If they're not around, you want to go for those squishies. You can get them down, you can harass. Some people that Tracer is weak against, however, is someone like McCree, who if they flashbang her, she's stunned and most likely will die. She's also very weak against Mei, who can freeze, like slow her down, which is pretty obvious. And she's also pretty weak to someone like Soldier 76, who his ult can automatically aim, but also he can just use his grenades at her and she usually will blow up, because if you're a good soldier, you will aim those grenades at people's feet. Something else to note, if you use your recall, you can use it to take debuffs off of you as well as heal. For instance, if you have Widowmaker's Venom Mine or Zenyatta's Orb on you, you can recall and those will be taken off of you. So be sure to always use your recall when it needs to be used. Don't just use it all the time just to go back a little ways. That should be saved a little bit more just in case. Alright scrubs, that's the end of our Tracer walkthrough. I lied about not doing the horrible British accent again. Sorry! Please tap that like button. Please subscribe to Slaytrix and our sister channels, Snarled and Hissyfit. And if I missed anything in this Tracer walkthrough, please leave a comment down below letting us know what your tips and tricks are to becoming a really awesome Tracer player. And remember, the world could always use more heroes. The D out.